about it. Questions? We are moving to item 9, which is a RAFA, Auckland Regional Amenities Funding. We're required by law to fund things like opera, and I have had no free tickets from opera, and I don't want them, thanks. But and this year's report shows a lot more detail about how much we're funding and what percentage of their income comes from the levy, which is a very important thing to read. I'd like to see more progress on legislation to repeal this questionable law that predates the super city. And we have Victoria Carter here. Welcome, Victoria, Chair of the Funding Board, who's here to justify the increases and answer the questions about some of these outfits actually do. Victoria is the first RAFA Chair to actually turn up in person for some time. So welcome, Victoria. Deputy Mayor, would you like to move this? Okay. And it'll be seconded by Councillor Dalton. And off we go. In your hands, Victoria.
I'll just briefly introduce this item. So you're being asked to approve the Auckland Regional Amenities Funding Board's levy request for the year of just over $18.5 million. The Funding Board distributes that levy to the amenities listed in the legislation, and those amenities and the distribution is set out in the report. The Council's role under the legislation is to approve the entire levy, having received a recommendation from the Funding Board. The Funding Board has provided evidence that the funding plan and the levy request is in accordance with the law. It's within Council's budget set in the LTP, and it's in line with the previous year's request. Therefore, we recommend approving it. The other decision you have is setting the board remuneration, and we recommend that the remuneration stay at the amounts that it currently is set at. Also, just following on from the Mayor, acknowledged that this governing body did ask staff to progress law change for this Act and the wider sector. This work is progressing, and there is an update on that work at paragraph 49 of the report. So with that, I'll hand over to Victoria, and then happy to take questions afterwards.
Thank you. Tēnā tātou katoa Mayor, Deputy Mayor and fellow councillors. Kua raranga, tahi tātou, he whariki, he hapu ake, ngā whānau o Tamaki Makaurau. Collectively, we weave a mat that elevates the people of Auckland. Thank you for granting the levy that enabled all the amenities to do the wonderful work that they do for Auckland in the last 12 months. I've been in this role for just under a year, but I've been on the Funding Board since 2018. We're very sensitive to the burden on ratepayers, and in recent times have encouraged our amenities to think about the alliances, their ways of working together that might reduce costs and collaborate. And we've also encouraged the amenities to focus on their core activities rather than looking to expand their businesses and adding new initiatives. The Funding Board's very aware of all the financial pressures we face, in particular ratepayers, and with this in mind, we have proposed what we think is a modest increase for this year. One of the benefits of the Funding Board is that the directors acquire quite a lot of knowledge about each of the amenities and the way that they work and their businesses, what they do for Auckland. And this knowledge, combined with a rigorous assessment of the annual funding plans, I think provides a very good audit and assurance process for the Council. And I believe being good stewards of ratepayer money is in all our minds when we make our decisions. The legislation requires a sustainable revenue stream, and I also understand the need for the amenities to be able to have certainty of income, to be able to deliver the unique and important contributions that they do or that they make to Auckland. The process we undertake to eventually distribute the funds is a thoughtful and economical vehicle. I hope you will have noticed that our own costs of administration have remained the same as we continue to look at ways that we can operate more efficiently. That's all from me. I'll take questions. Thank you. And sorry, I should have introduced my Deputy Chair, Paula Browning.
Questions? Councillor Simpson, please. Deputy Mayor Simpson, Paula.
Thanks, Mayor. I had no questions for the chair or deputy or staff on this item because obviously I've been quite involved, but my question probably is to you, Phil, and it applies to both this item and the next item, and it's around the legislation. So as part of the political working group on cultural institution, we've asked for legislation to be looked at. If we get this advice mid-2025, I think it's about June, on a possible structure to put into law, would we look to get legislation prepared and introduced early next term of council and before the central government election? Is that a reasonable assumption?
Yes, I do think it's reasonable. Obviously, we're not in any sense in direct control of the legislative program, but I think firstly we can have the preparatory work, advice, even draft something in that time frame, and it's probably realistic to work with government to try and progress it in that time frame. Yes.
Or else we just do this year after like we've done for 15 years.
Well, we need
I'd
to
like
bring it to a
speak.
head.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
So I'd like to reserve my right to speak, but that was my only question. Thank you.
With regard to the progressing the legislation, we'll make sure that's part of the whatever regional deal we get to discuss. There'll be a whole lot of legislation. We're waiting for it to be coming through. I've got a couple of questions myself. I found it quite interesting to read the funding as a percentage. And I'm familiar and particularly with life-saving and water. And the water safe, I mean, life-saving in itself is a very popular, almost cannot touch motherhood and apple pie thing. But even in that, you know, you've got to admire the lifesavers at Piha and North Piha and Karikari and Muriwai, but not particularly dry. You know, the justification for Mairangi Bay and Red Beach and those places that don't have SEF has always been a question of mine, because it's more like babysitting rather than actually life-saving. And then as far as Auckland water safety, we've never really had a good presentation to justify 69% of their revenue for this, because, again, I've looked at some of the stuff they've published, and they had a photo of a young kid on a stand-up paddleboard wearing a life jacket. The missing thing, you don't need a life jacket on a stand-up paddleboard, you need a leg rope. So that the basic requirement for water safety was missing in their advertisement. There's 130 kilograms of buoyancy, litres of buoyancy associated with that. There's no leg rope. And so I would like to arrange for us, water safe, to come and justify that if you're at 69%, in other words, nobody else believes in you, that's what that's saying. Some of these other ones are getting quite good. Opera is down to, if they just put their prices up 20%, we could wipe that out. That's a good sign as well. So I think it's up to us to be fairly caustic about this. These are large sums of money. And the money that's not going somewhere else. I realise that legislatively we have to do some of these things, but there's no particular reason why. And WaterSafe have jumped the largest percentage. Exactly what's happened this year. You know, more people are swimming in the pool down at which is very hard to drown in that. It's in front of lots of people. So just being difficult, but that's my role.
Would you like me to answer a couple of those points? With SURF, SURF make the decision on where they allocate people and where they put their lifeguards. But one of the most interesting things that I've learned is that Red Beach is over 80 years old. It's one of the oldest surf clubs in Auckland. And most interesting for me is that Mairangi Bay, Red Beach and Orewa are actually the feeders because of the population around them that teach the lifeguards that then go over to our dangerous West Coast beaches.
Yeah, well, they're very good at justifying themselves. We're at Omaha, and the 700 members of the Omaha Surf Club and I've never seen 700 people in the surf there. It's kind of like a large babysitting organisation, and for the parents in Omaha to send the kids along to the nippers for the morning, it's not quite what I had in mind in terms of saving people's lives. So it's not unreasonable to question these things. As I say, I'm a great admirer of the people on the West Coast.
Yeah.
At Omaha, there are 700 members and their children. That's great.
And
But-
I'd like to hear from
Know a bit about this.
Your Worship, it's also noteworthy that when we had the anniversary weekend floods, Mairangi Bay was able to deploy all of its assets to other parts of Auckland when the West Coast was unable to.
I accept that they're well-intentioned and they're good and everything like that there, but I just, if it's Mairangi Bay flood pretension, that's fine as well, but it's not. So people are allowed to question these things, but more so water safe.
Water safety come off a very small base. They are in the business of preventative education. One of the things that's been drawn to my attention as a result of this process is that none of the amenities have actually come to present to the council for a while. So I think that is a really good opportunity, and Chris Levitt and I are now talking about which is the appropriate committee for the amenities to come and present to, so that you can know the good works that we think they are doing, which is why we supported their funding.
But I mean, all the other ones then had modest increases, but for some reason or other, Water Safe's got nearly 13% in 1 year, in a year where we're at pains to hold rates to nominal figures, and I'm just wondering what brought that on.
Your Worship, perhaps I can answer that. WaterSafe needed a workforce management system in order to be able to comply with legislation and regulation around health and safety. So it's a compliance obligation rather than anything exceptional or something that they actually had a choice in.
So that 12.8% is to make Water Safe, not actually us.
That's an excellent way to put it.
That's not quite what I had in mind. I think
Unfortunately,
they're due to
compliance
come
for these
along here
organisations is a thing.
and explain that. So we're paying 12.8% to make Water Safe safe. All right. Well, it's been, as nobody else has got their hand up to risk the public's opprobrium of actually asking hard questions, but I have. It's been moved and seconded. No, we can step back from the thing there and is the question, Councillor Watson?
Speak to the item at the appropriate time.
You can sit back and now we'll have discussion. But thank you for your attendance, Victoria, and your deputy. It's nice to see them. Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mayor. Victoria, I'd like to thank you, your Deputy Chair and the Board for your findings and recommendations. So we're both balanced and reasonable, and one of the reasons you are here is to give that independent advice, which isn't political, and I think you've done a very good job. I think we should also acknowledge the staff who in the report have anticipated questions in their report about how we're going with the law change and things like the ATC and its ground lease. I do want to talk a little bit about the law change. I mean, if these were easy issues to solve, we wouldn't be here 15 years later. All right. The government declined to do the work during amalgamation, and we are still dealing with the impact of that now. But I appreciate the work that the CCO governance are doing and working towards that, and it will come, that legislation change paper will come to us in June, which is why I asked the question of the Chief Executive about how long between the paper coming and the delivery of some action around this, so we do not go year after year for both this and the next item. I do want to say that, I'm one of these people that really appreciate each and every one of the amenities that are are receiving funding. I do believe Surf Lifesaving do a great job, and without them, I think our young people, our rangatiki tahi rather, could potentially get in trouble in the water. Our drowning statistics are not attractive in Auckland, and so all power to the Surf Lifesaving people for what they do. They certainly aren't babysitters in my opinion. I would just reiterate in conclusion that the RAFA board have been mandated to explore, investigate and delve into these amenities and independently assess them for funding. And I urge you support their recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Watson.
Just the opportunity to follow on from some of the comments from the Deputy Mayor there in respect of the Surf Lifesaving Clubs. I think it's important to note that in respect of all of them, but particularly the ones that were referenced on the East Coast, Red Beach, Orewa, Mairangi Bay, not only have they been in existence since the 1950s, all of them have memberships well into the thousands, so they have a huge club membership. But I guess from my point of perspective, more importantly than that, between them, they look after virtually all the beaches on the East Coast. So they just don't look after Red Beach or Orewa. They're going right up to Tawharanui Peninsula. And as the Deputy Mayor so correctly commented, that East Coast now is the beaches for all of Auckland. In the summer months, we have huge numbers of visitations from people right across the Auckland region, and a large number of people who unfortunately aren't particularly water-wise, and despite the fact that there might not be, the coastlines of Portugal with 50-metre waves coming in, there's still people who get caught and whose lives are put at danger, and there have been drownings over many years. So I think it's really important to acknowledge the wider regional benefit that these clubs provide and the other functions that they perform. During the flooding, it was Mairangi Bay Surf Club who saved lives because that whole area was flooded out. It was them. They were the go-to. I don't know what we'd have done if it wasn't for them. So I, for one, just want to acknowledge the huge contribution surf life-saving clubs make generally, but in particular the ones that I'm familiar with, who, in terms of return on investment, do way more than the grants we do, and that's for the very real task of keeping people safe and providing the surveillance that otherwise wouldn't exist.
Thank you for that, Councillor.
Kia ora, thanks Chair. I just want to add my voice as well to the Deputy Mayor and to Councillor Watson in support of Surf Lifesaving. I've certainly experienced over many decades when our churches go out to your beaches that sometimes our members get into trouble, and it's your Surf Lifesaving teams that come out and assist, and they've always done so without question or condition. So I understand the benefit definitely for not just the areas, on the East Coast and West Coast, but for the whole of Tāmaki Makaurau, Auckland. But I just wanted to add my voice as well in terms of water safe, because for the areas I represent, drowning is a huge, huge issue for our swimmers, but also for our boaties. And since I've been on an elected member as first on the local board and now, of course, at the governing body since 2013, I've seen an increase in the way that Drowning Prevention Auckland have engaged with our communities in South Auckland in particular, and with our Pasifika communities across the city. So I'm really thankful for them for the work that they've done. They've made a huge difference to our communities, and I know there's still more work yet to do, and I know that they've got that in the pipeline as well. And I understand also they've been working closely with the Coast Guard, for example, so there is more of a focus on drowning prevention for those very vulnerable groups across the city. So I just want to tautoko them for that work and add my support, and I will be supporting the recommendation. Kia ora.
Councillor Newman, please.
Your Worship, two things. I've had the privilege of working with a friend of mine, Judy Tipping, in the water safe space, and it just leads me to reconfirm the importance of that organisation. One, the work that they do. Two, that it's complementary to other organisations that do excellent work in terms of education and drowning prevention. But three, to reiterate that it's not an organisation that's operating with a great big overhead. It's an organisation that's operating tight, and I actually am surprised it's been able to trade that long with the limited funding that's been made available to it. I don't attend the opera or the theatre very often, or at all actually, but maybe I should. But I make the point with respect to the specific amenities, and whilst I support the repeal of the ARAFA legislation, because it was set up, of course, prior to amalgamation to compel the councils of the day to contribute to the specified amenities. Okay, the challenge is going to be when the legislation is repealed and you deregulate in the space, how many other groups that are not currently within the group are going to want to come forward and say, well, actually, we think that we provide amenity which is of equal or more importance too. So sometimes it's a case of being careful what you wish for, because it's not going to be a case of repeal and they're all going to go away. My view is that you can repeal it and a whole lot more are going to come, and that's going to require some very clear methodology as to how you're going to address all of the meritorious needs and applications that are going to turn up seeking regional funding and beyond the specified amenities covered under the Act, Your Worship. Thank you.
You make a good point, but I think organisations that need 70% of their money to be donated flirting with trouble. There are plenty more out there, and whilst it's probably very electorally dangerous for me to question any of these things, I do so. I mean, I've surfed many times this season at Tawharanui, and there's never been anyone there either drowning or a lifesaver, because the surfers fish them out. Richard Hills.
Thank you, Mayor. And yeah, just wanted to echo some of the comments around surf lifesaving. Just, I think last year the figures were about 300 people they rescued and 70,000 safety preventions across just Auckland alone. And a lot of it still happens on the East Coast beaches. And as Councillor Watson says, they support the beaches down lower of the clubs. And I'm going to speak about next week when we discuss Wairoa Valley. 69 people were saved that night just in the Wairoa Valley by the Mairangi Bay Surf Club. And, you know, we did have 2 tragic deaths in the Wairoa Valley that night, but the 69 that were saved, who knows what would have happened if they didn't jump into action. I'm not going to list all the funding. Obviously, a lot of what happens in here is supported by our communities, but I just want to acknowledge the Arts Festival the last month or 4 weeks. The phenomenal amount of work that goes into that, but also the fact that it filled all our theatres, filled our car parks, filled our buses, trains. You know, we are getting a lot of that revenue back through the door. A lot of our major events, we can't measure that we are getting physical funds back to the council, but we know that the Arts Festival helps fill up the Civic and Aotea Centre and all our public transport as well. It was full, hundreds of events across the city, and it was a really good showcase of talent from New Zealand and from Auckland and from overseas. So it's a really important thing that we put funding into, and we get a lot back as a city, as one example. Thank you.
Well, there's a very impassioned plea for the midnight levy, I think. It does fill the hotels rather than the ratepayers' pockets. Councillor Ward.
Sure. So I'll also endorse my thanks to the ARAFA team and commend them for the work that they do. Like Councillor Hills, I attended some of the Auckland Festival events. Not too many, but enough to impress on me in no particular order. One, the subsidies we received from other organisations, which were significant, particularly from international collaboration. So, for example, the Scottish Ballet, who were outstanding, and they performed at the Aotea Centre, and I would suggest contributed to the revenue of that centre. So it isn't just the arts festival, but it's the enhancement in the capacity that we get in these venues that we own, or if we don't own, that we fund. I also think that the way the Arts Festival approaches the new talent that they bring on, that goes to content, was outstanding, of international quality, and some of these shows, for example, the Toireri, I don't know whether I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it was a form of opera with te reo, that has the potential to go elsewhere around New Zealand and also overseas. And it brings on talent. So I was particularly impressed with this year's Arts Festival. The other matter that I want to speak to is drowning prevention and surf lifesaving. They are both critically important, and I also endorse the role that the surf lifesaving played in the floods. That was critical in some parts of Auckland, their ability to be able to respond more quickly than many other components of civil defence was highly commendable. I also make the observation that surf lifesaving, certainly in the Albany ward, and I'm referring to in particular Mairangi Bay and Orewa, still suffer from the delays in clubhouse construction. Surf lifesaving is also significantly impinged by storm surges and coastal erosion. So if ever there was a time where surf lifesaving needs some support, in my view, that's now, and we don't adequately factor these things in. So again, I'm supportive of RAFA and their recommendations. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's it. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. The contrary, carried. Thank you very much. We'll move to, and thank you for your attendance there, Victoria Carter and your deputy. Come forward those who are speaking to the Museum of Transport and Technologies